Welcome to the Good Divorce Show, where we can help you learn how to navigate the journey of divorce with less conflict, less debt, and equip you not to just get divorced, but also learn how to be divorced. Your host, certified divorce coach Karen McNenny, shares her wealth of knowledge, gets advice from other relationship experts, and interviews couples who learn how to have a good divorce, so you can too. Now here's your host, Karen.
Hi there. Thanks for joining me today on the Good Divorce Show, which is absolutely the place to be if you are looking to transform your own divorce experience. And as always, we have experts on our show, but we also interview folks just like you, listener, who has been, on the other side, who can perhaps provide some light and possibility for what is awaiting for you, particularly if you find yourself in the dark days of divorce. And we know, been there, done that. There are dark days. But today I have invited Ellen Carey on the show. She has been a nurse for over 44 years, also has an energy healing practice. It has been many decades since she was divorced. However, she continued to work side by side with her former spouse. We're going to hear more about that. And they had 2 daughters together, which means they also were doing graduations and weddings and now also grandbabies. So Ellen, thank you so much for coming on the show to share part of your story. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, let's go back to the time, as you say, when the D word finally gets spoken, and what I refer to as that kind of messy middle space. Are we in? Are we out? Should we stay together? We're trying. Let's go to counseling. Let's try this. I think so many of us struggle with just making the decision. And you, as your former spouse, were no different. Would you mind pulling back the curtain a little bit of why, in particular, for your family, making that decision was so difficult, and what was really informing your ability to make that decision together?
Well, first I would say that we all get married thinking that's our life going forward. And so when all of a sudden you find yourself in a position where there's not a lot of forward thinking going on in terms of what you and your partner are going to be, there's just a stall that happens in life. And I have always said that there's 3 ways it can go. You can either stay steady as stay the course and it sort of suck it up and carry on, and there's a distance there, or you get you're a lucky one and a recalibration happens and you not reclaim a way moving forward that is different and mutually beneficial or acceptable, or you get divorced. It feels like there's 3 ways to go.
I would echo that as well.
Yeah. And so something had happened to change the dynamic of our relationship where we weren't, each one of us was kind of going inward in our own way to deal with whatever we were facing, rather than trying to come together and find a different solution or find a different way.
And how long had you been married when the question came up? When the decision had been made, you had been together quite some time.
Yeah. Let's see. We had been together since 1978.
Right.
We got married in 84.
Yeah.
So it had been nearly 30 years. And so the difficulty was both people were family oriented. Both of us really cared about what we had built together. There was always mutual respect and deep love. So it was hard to even imagine saying, this isn't working anymore.
And you had children.
We did. And they were, at the time when I realized that the relationship was suffering, I still had one daughter left in high school. The other one was in college. So,
and the time, I guess the question is, did your children ever move between homes?
No, they did not.
Waited. And was there any part of you in that, let's just wait till the kids graduate?
No, that was also something in my back of my mind that I always found curious, because if you then stick it out for the kids, you're modeling a poor relationship for them.
Mhm.
And that I think, to the extent that you can be honest with yourself and honest with your partner and reflect that, that's a huge part of any relationship, even if it's not working.
Yeah.
And that kids need to be able to see those processes. And I don't know, it's almost like a magnet. I never had any reason to doubt my relationship. I never had any reason to not trust or have any desire not to be married. And then all of a sudden I am faced with what's happening here. And it was very much not anticipated and a surprise.
Right? Well, and none of us married with the intention of getting divorced.
Right.
It so happens that your children were of age to head off to college and start living on their own. But I think this is a really interesting dynamic, and I would appreciate you chatting with our listeners about, 18, it's not like you're done. Now we're divorced and we don't have to co-parent anymore. Because I know those 18 to 25-year-old, that period, they're still trying to, get through college and get financially secure and find their job and long-term relationships. So there's still a lot of parenting going on. And sometimes when we divorce after the kids are out of high school, especially during that last stage of adolescence, 18 to 25, the family doesn't really have a rule book. We didn't have a parenting plan. We don't have a schedule of where we spend holidays. We don't know how to kind of operate as a family that is divorced. So how did you and your children and their father begin to navigate this new territory that you had never been in with young adults who still needed a co-parent team?
Well, it's messy, and you do the best you can. I think that my older daughter she moved, and she was on the East Coast, so she had more distance to it. And my younger daughter was going to college in the same town that we lived in. And I think that it may have been hard on her, because the dad would want to be with her, and then the mom would want to be with her, and she's launching. And she doesn't have that solid home that she perceived to be launching out of. And so clearly, when the divorce is fresh and raw, or even if there's a time of separation before the actual divorce, there's a lot of just maneuvering and trying to figure it out. I think I mentioned in my thought, or putting my thoughts together, that, they need their family and they need to bounce off. There are things that the dad offers that is different than the things that the mother offers. And you need to allow space for that and be as neutral as you possibly can, even though the wounds are raw. And sometimes that means stepping away and taking time for yourself. And I think trying to focus on things that are enjoyable to do is a really good things that both people, the daughter or the child and the parent, enjoy doing together. And since my role was predominantly mother, and they're adults now and they don't need that, we had to create some things to do and find areas of commonality.
Right.
To enjoy together.
Yeah. And I guess, the message that I hear in that, for those of you who might be divorcing after your children launch or in the midst of launching, is that you do still have a relationship. The marriage is over, and kids need co-parents. They need their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And even though there's not a court or a consultant like myself who's sitting down to put a parenting plan together, you may find value in creating your own parenting plan around holidays and time spent so that the kids don't become the decider and the responsible one to have to choose.
Yeah.
There's actually some guardrails and guidelines that everybody can follow in those early years, quite honestly.
I think it was a very clear decision, probably on both of our parts, to maintain the role of co-parent
Yeah.
and to keep a solid front for them in that regard. And, sometimes we did family dinners, like if you look at the child growing up, Sunday dinners were a big thing. And it would maybe be the only night of the week where we could all be together. So we continued to have some of those. And, there was individuation and separation, but every once in a while we would do that. And then you navigate a holiday and you have to plan in advance. What does this look like now? It's interesting because I'm a planner and I needed to say, okay, what does Christmas Eve look like? What does Christmas Day look like? And if I'm going to be navigating this singularly, you need to have some prep time to be able to find where you're going to be so you're not alone.
Right.
And are sharing the holiday because it's a time of gathering.
Yeah. And is that a conversation you and your former spouse would have in anticipation of the holidays? Of like, are we doing it together or separate? Who's hosting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did. I was probably, like I said, I was the planner and I would be the one bringing that up. And sometimes I think it might be, oh, that's the last thing, or we'll work it out. I go, no, we're going to define it. We're going to define it because I need to know. And and to be able to say it's okay, however it looks.
But
and
let's
be clear. And it turns out that we have shared a lot, most holidays when the children are around. Yeah.
Which is just glorious. You mentioned earlier just like some of those big feelings that come up and that self-care. And I think we as a society underestimate the impact divorce has on individuals, and we're often left alone in isolation and shame. I would even go as far as to say that we kind of are neglectful of divorcing families in the workplace, in our social structure, and that a part of why the Good Divorce Show exists is to hear stories like yours so that people can imagine it doesn't all have to be doom and gloom and war forever, right? That doesn't help. But in the heat of it, there's so much emotion. And I hate to take you back in time, but I'm going to ask you, Ellen, because you also have a lot of insight about self-care and the things that we can do. So if you were just speaking to a listener right now who is in those early days of what they might be feeling and some things that they could consider doing in order to help move through feeling all the feelings.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that took me by surprise is just how big my grief was. And maybe I was at an age in my life where it was safe to let myself feel grief.
Mm.
But the grief that came pouring out was much bigger than the divorce. And I was quite taken back, I think, by this surge of grief that just kind of overwhelmed me. And then I realized that I was grieving certain aspects of my childhood. I had experienced the death of a fiance in my early 20s. That those, when I was little as a child and when I was 20, it was not I didn't have the resources or the support or the safety net to really feel that grief. And I kind of just pushed through and, jam on with life because you're 20 and everybody around you is having a good time. Nobody's really going to be that empathetic or sensitive to your grief. And so you just carry on. Well, at 55, it all just came flying out. And what I would say to people is, I had this image of kind of hanging on the edge of the um, rabbit hole, if you will,
Yeah.
and that I really was afraid to just surrender into the feeling. It just felt like too big of an abyss. And one day I just let go. And it's like, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to be in the fetal position on my bed for the rest of my life? But I just gave myself complete permission to be in that, to feel it. And I was sure you'd feel like you're falling down the rabbit hole, but then all of a sudden there was a different energy, sort of an updraft, if you will. And I went, huh, I don't have to hang on to the edge here. I can surrender and feel this, and something else rises. And that was probably the first time in my life that I got that feeling like, oh, you're not going to die if you feel so deeply.
Well, that's so beautiful. And I'm sure there are others listening and relating to, like, is it safe to feel this much? And this idea of surrender. And, you know, I have clients who will say, Karen, I don't know how to get through it. I just don't know how I'm going to get through it. And I always say, well, the reality is you do have to go through it. And there's that old children's book, Going on a Bear Hunt. And you get to a big mountain or a big swamp and you're like, you can't go around it and you can't go over it and you can't go under it. You have to go through it. And I think that's what I hear you saying, of that surrender, is that I actually have to feel the big feelings of grief. And divorce is a death. This is part of what I think we underestimate. It's a death, the marriage, right? Which then is a death of our identity as husband or wife. It's a death of the future that we believed we were going to have and that was set in motion, and those dreams. Like, there's so many layers. And then, as you said, Ellen, you had all of this kind of reciprocal from family of origin and childhood trauma and in your 20s, and it stores up and it just waits for you, and then it all kind of comes and pushes through. So that idea of really, you do have to just go through it. And if you don't go through it today, that's fine. It's just going to go in the crock pot and wait for you until you really are ready.
And, you know, I guess one of the best pieces of advice I was given was, when you feel overwhelmed, just take a nap. And it's like your mind gets out of the way, and all the thoughts, like if you're feeling shame or if you're wondering what you're going to do and your mind starts racing, if you can just surrender into being with yourself in this emotion and be able to nap, it's like a reset. And the natural buoyancy of you has an opportunity to fill your space again. So I did actually take a lot of naps. And then the other thing that I really did is found some body movement that I could enjoy. And that was, I got into bicycling, and I rode a lot and found some friends who rode. And so it's the combination of being able to feel like you're moving in the world and surrendering at the same time. It was a good combination for me.
Oh, that's such great advice. When in doubt, take a nap.
Yeah.
You know, I think something else that we forget is that as much as we've romanticized marriage and we plan the wedding and we're fed a lot of fairy tale information, the reality is marriage is a financial contract.
Yes.
And I think we would do well to educate young people and everyone who is on the verge of getting married for the first time to really understand that financial contract. And for you, that was complicated even more because where you were employed at the time of divorce was at a law firm with your spouse.
Yeah.
So listeners, hold on to that thought for a moment. And when we come back from the break, we're going to hear from Ellen how she navigated her new financial reality, working alongside your ex-husband and pushing through and finding things in her own professional life that also became her own. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you thinking about getting divorced? Before you call a lawyer, call the Good Divorce Coach, Karen McNenny, a certified divorce counselor, co-parenting specialist, and mediator. Karen's signature Good Divorce experience will guide you through your divorce journey from the day you make that difficult decision to the day the decree is signed, all for a predictable fee. The Good Divorce Coach will teach you and your partner how to get divorced and be divorced with less conflict and less debt. Visit thegooddivorcecoach.com to get in touch with Karen.
Now, back to the show with Karen.
Welcome back to the Good Divorce Show. I'm Karen McNenny, your Good Divorce Coach, chatting today with Ellen Carey, a longtime nurse, also energy healing practice that she helps to guide other people through their own journeys, and a mother, an ex-wife, and now a grandma, and freshly retired. Congratulations, Ellen.
Thank you.
So exciting. So I mentioned just before we went to the break that you have this experience that is unique because during marriage, you and your spouse worked together in the same law firm. And can you just give a quick high level, like what were you doing there and what was he doing there and how the collaboration looked like?
So my ex is an attorney and I am a nurse, as we've established, but the office works with a lot of personal injury and workers' comp and a little bit of medical malpractice considerations. So all of that kind of law, there's people that are injured and have health-related issues that are really part and parcel to the legal case. So the law firm has historically had nurses working to support the case management and to get the information forward for the attorneys. So I had I began working at the law office in 2006, and prior to that, well, I guess that's enough.
Give us the highlight of,
Yeah.
And just for a sense of context and how close you were working with your spouse, how many people in this law firm?
It's a small law firm. There's 3 attorneys, 1 nurse, and 1 or 2, an office manager, paralegal, and sometimes there was another receptionist. And
yeah, to be clear, listeners, this isn't like, oh, we both work together at Amazon and we don't really have to see each other and we can avoid the hallways.
Right.
It's very intimate, less than 10 people, you're going to be interacting.
5 or 6 people.
Yeah, and so there you are, not only a financial tether to your spouse, but also your livelihood as you considered going into singlehood. And again, I'm going to ask you to go back and think about all that asset division and the things that, have memories. And I think sometimes we start clinging to things that may not matter down the road. But it is a big part of the divorce process is the division of assets.
Oh, yes. I think that, when you go into marriage, most of us are thinking about the relationship and not so much about finances. But finances always come into play. You're working, you're wanting to create, save for your, start saving for retirement. You want to have a house, you need cars, you have to pay for childcare, all the things. So who's providing health insurance in the marriage? There's so many pieces that all translate into money. So starting out with very little and being able to have successful careers independently at first, I did a lot on before the law office in the healthcare field. But at some point you reach a level of stride where we were doing pretty well. And so then you start the divorce process and the glue of the marriage is gone or the relationship is gone and you have to start untethering everything. And the financial piece or the marriage is an economic institution. That was the biggest building block of the marriage that had to start being parsed out and tethered, untethered. That took me by surprise. I wasn't really prepared for it. The money piece, while I enjoyed having some ease and my financial ease, it was never my focus. So during the divorce process, you have to unpack all of that piece by piece by piece. And for some people, money can be really threatening, or there's not enough, or the tug and pull. It's a difficult maneuver. And I was very grateful to have the guidance of the attorney to talk to me about my legal rights with regard to the financial building block of the marriage, and have guidance about all of that, to be able to be supported as you're going through all the unpacking.
Right.
It became a process of becoming very informed of assets, because it wasn't an area I was paying a whole lot of attention to. Because it was being taken care of. That was
Maybe history.
more, yeah.
And there's always a not uncommon kind of a division. I think sometimes, if we just go with gender roles of this era, the man is managing the money, tracking the money, distributing the money, in the same way that some dads find themselves a little bit fish out of water when they have to take on a lot of the child rearing responsibilities as a single parent that mom was taking care of. I think, really what we are saying to you listeners is that you're going to start to become a holistic approach to your entire life, all yours to carry. And that can just be really disorienting for some of us.
Well, it was a good process. It was good for me to start taking that and understanding what then is the foundation for my life going forward. So I think by the time the divorce happened, I was very well informed, because I was paying attention to all of that detail.
Because your divorce had a very long tail. 4 years.
Yeah.
From day of decision to day of decree. And meanwhile, or roundabout, there's also this working relationship. So did you quit? Did you quit the marriage and quit the job? What was the tension of decision making? And ultimately, we all want to hear what happened.
Okay. Well, the 4 years was separation to divorce. And so there was a period of separation where neither one of us could get to say the D word.
Separately.
Finally, yes. At some point, I just went, this relationship doesn't feel good to me. And that it's not my vision of what a marriage is, and it felt unbearable to stay in it. So I wasn't going to be in that camp of people who just suck it up and carry on. So I moved out, and when I moved out, I really didn't have a plan for divorce. I was always ever hopeful that the marriage would recalibrate, but after time just kept going, and it was clear the recalibration wasn't happening, then the divorce word came on board, and then it was a 2-year process with the attorneys on divorce.
It's longer than we think it should take and longer than we would like it to take.
Yeah, and part of that length is just attorneys are busy people, and you get on their calendar and you do something that moves the process along, and then you have to wait for the next opening in their calendar, or something has to happen before that. And so that 2 years really isn't anything that you can control or speed up.
Unless you work with a divorce consultant like myself.
Yes.
Where I'm in touch with my clients every week, sometimes twice a week. And I only take so many clients on at a time, because I think that languishing, that time when which I was 27 months from the moment we moved into 2 houses until we walked out of the courthouse, right? Just over 2 years. And for the same reasons, which is part of why I've crafted this business for families, so that we're doing progressive mediation. We're writing the parenting plan. We're building those co-parenting skills along the way. And then we just go to a lawyer and have 3 meetings with them and say, these are all the things we've decided, right? The couple, write them up. That's what we need, and send them off to the judge.
Sounds great.
3 to 6 months is about how long families spend with me. But again, it's a very specific kind of client base because it's two individuals with or without kids who want to have a good divorce experience, who can sit at the table together and be more cooperative and collaborative. And sometimes we need that highly skilled divorce lawyer to really advocate and fight on our behalf. So lots of different ways to do it. We just want you, as you listen, to recognize that, be intentional, right, about the approach that you want to take. And just know that it's not one size fits all. There's lots of ways to do it. So you get yourself divorced. But what I'm curious about is what happened at work?
Okay. Well, during the separation and where I worked with my ex in a family-owned business, and it was really pretty overwhelming. I took about a couple of different leave of absence, 3 months. And, that's like the FMLA 12 weeks in a calendar year you can have. I took that for myself and just
real quick, Ellen, because I'm curious, you took FMLA. In this case and within the HR policies of the firm, was divorce actually one of the qualifying factors of FMLA?
No, and the law firm is small, so they don't really have to do FMLA, but I knew that 12 weeks was a right that many people had, and so I took it.
Yes.
And I didn't know if I would be back. I just said I'm taking a leave of absence, and I left it at that. And I had some ideas to create, do the work that I do as a consultant for many law offices. But to tell you the truth, my bandwidth was pretty low. So I gave myself some time and space. And then when I really knew the divorce was happening, and that's this ultimate separation of our marriage was going to be absolute, took another leave of absence. And at that time, I applied for a job that I had every qualification that the job asked for in the essential functions. And, not to be egotistical, but all my life when I apply for jobs, I get them. And so I just had no reason to think that I wouldn't get that job. And I had the application completely done, and I was going to send it online, and I just took a pause. And in that moment, I did sort of an inventory about what was important to me. Was I running? Was I just taking it and looking for a different job to get out of there? Or how was this different job going to serve me and my goals and values? And one of the things about working at the law office, when you're in healthcare, you work long hours. It's really demanding. You're taking care of patients, and you're dealing with institutions that can't offer you very much flexibility. I wasn't able to get to some of my kids' school events because I was on duty at the hospital. When I got to the law office, it was banker's hours, 9 to 5. Going to work at 9 instead of 7 felt like heaven. If there was a program at school, there was no question that I could go to it. Sports events out of town, I could leave early and get there. And medical appointments, I just suddenly found in my life I had qualities in my job that mattered. And then, not to forget the energy healing practice. I was working 4 days a week, and I had 1 day free. And I was in the process of building my energy healing practice to see clients on that day. And so when I was going to apply for this other job, it was full time. I needed that for the financial salary and health benefits and all of that. I wouldn't have been able to have my energy healing practice. I just went, no, I don't want to step back into not having the flexibility and the quality of work life that I have. So I didn't send the job application in. And that's when I kind of recalibrated my own self, going, why does everything about me have to change? And can this stay the same? Because it's good for me. It's beneficial. It's benefiting me in many ways.
In many ways, but it will
Mhm.
require you to work alongside
Mhm.
your former spouse. And
Correct.
even the very best of divorces are hard, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
usually be, and if we're lucky, they get better. So you really did have to recalibrate and make a decision and a commitment to go back.
So I chose not to be looking for other jobs. I just went, I don't have the bandwidth right now. I'm just going to ride this. I did get some certifications I started working on certifications that would allow me to put my own shingle out and do nurse consulting. But I found that I didn't like it because it's beneficial and good to be involved with something from the get-go, to be involved with the case from the get-go, to understand what the issues are and then be able to contribute as you go. And being a part of it from the beginning, I could anticipate a bit where a big push on my part would need to happen. And I did do some consulting on the side. And they don't really understand how much time it takes me to do what I need to do and timelines. It was very pressurized, and you didn't have the working relationship or the dialogue along the way that all helps everything to unfold more smoothly. So as time went by, I just went, this is what I'm doing, and it's okay.
And how did you reconcile? And what did it look like over time? Because it's been 9 years since you divorced, and you just retired like yesterday.
Yeah.
And was it a conversation you had with your ex-spouse around new boundaries or how you would operate in the office? Or was it just business as usual, carry on, and was just really boundaried within that work window?
It wasn't really a conversation. We didn't really have a conversation about it. I think that, you can interpret it a few ways. I really strove for neutrality while I was at work. And, it could be if she's just compartmentalizing her emotions. I kept in touch with how I was feeling, and I was very private about how I was feeling. And, and just maintained neutrality and professionalism to the extent that I could at work. And that gave kind of everyone, all five of us, right, permission to just carry on. And, there's something kind of soothing about that too. And I think, people understood that people just were kind. They gave me time and space, and I think that they appreciated the neutrality and to be able to just do the work.
And I'm here to say compartmentalization can be very beneficial and appropriate. And I like how you said, I stayed in touch with my feelings, but we pick and choose, right? I might be a fetal position, crying my eyes out on the bathroom floor. I'm not going to go to the grocery store and do the same thing.
Right.
It's this idea of how do we manage those emotions? We don't dismiss them, but we manage them.
Right.
And you and your former spouse found a way to manage that at work and continue to work. How did your personal relationship, the two of you, evolve over, that decade of working side by side but not being married?
Well, one of the benefits of being able to be interfacing with your ex-spouse on a fairly routine basis is there were times where his behavior or his personality and his behaviors were just shining in all their glory. And I could just sit back going, I am a lucky woman to not be married to that. So, it just gave me some distance and appreciation, whereas before I might have not, I just noticed like, that's just a bother, or, I don't really care for that.
They don't have to engage in it. Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah. So it was really just provided me great insight along the way. Some of it is humorous in that way. And then affirmations that I did receive a lot of self-affirmations by just staying in that neutral place of and then the positive side of that is, there were many things about, I trusted his judgment, his intellect. I appreciated his skills in life and as an attorney. And I still was able to benefit from that as the years now have gone by and the ongoing support too.
Well, sometimes I think we have this idea in our head that if you get divorced, your only option is to hate the person and be enemies in perpetuity. Well, that is just nonsense. There was a love story. I mean, for most of us, our children were born from love, and we don't have to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. And I think this story is so extraordinary of being able to the parts of the relationship that were good, which was your professional relationship and your parenting relationship. Most of us, we have to find our co-parent world, but you also have to find that professional world. And we talk a lot in the Good Divorce Experience about becoming indifferent towards your spouse, which is kind of what you described in my imagination of, oh, there's that behavior, but I'm not getting ignited. I don't have to teach to it. It's not, I can laugh at it. I can look at it and go, yep, that's that. But I don't go home with that anymore.
Yeah, I don't go home with that anymore.
And the ability to just kind of let that water shed off of us. And we say it comes for most of us in time. And what I want to encourage you to do, those of you listening, is just put a little pressure on the gas pedal. If you're going to get to that place anyway, just get there sooner as you can. Just know that there's also a certain amount of choice. There's the emotional journey, as Ellen talked about, but there's also the choice of, I'm not going to let that rattle my whole day. I'm not going to let that bring me down. I'm going to see that as distant from me and just that relief and affirmation that I made the right choice. I'm not going home with that anymore.
Yeah, and I guess I would just, also take the time you need, because this whole process was a decade, that recognizing that things unfold and just giving yourself the space and time that you need in a safe place. And for me, that was, my home or my inner circle of friends. And that's it, support yourself.
Yes. And
along the way.
Yep, and give yourself permission to that. As we mentioned earlier, your daughters were young adults and now adults in their 30s. Along the way, there were weddings. In fact, they got married the same summer. Is that correct?
Yeah, they got married 7 weeks apart.
Oh, goodness.
A lot.
And a lot of people who have divorce in the rearview mirror are looking to these substantial, you now share a grandbaby, and there were these weddings, and people move on and they repartner, and sometimes they remarry. There might even be, stepchildren who come into the family, and having to sort of shift our heart in order to let the family grow and morph is not uncommon. And I'm wondering what it looked like in your story and how the family shifted and how you arrived at those really, touchstone events for your daughters.
So, boundaries. And some of my friends criticize me for not having a strong boundary, because we would do some family things together after divorce. And so then they would criticize that, like, well, Ellen, you're not moving on. You're just holding on. And then I worked at the same office. Ellen, you don't have a clear boundary. So I did take some flack for that. And then there was another area of my ex-husband's partner. And, as happens with minis, another person can be a major contributing cause to why the marriage breaks down in the first place. And
a catalyst of change when people...
Yes.
Yes, there was a catalyst.
Yes, there was. So I had, well, it appeared to some that I had weak boundaries. I felt good about my paying attention to where I was within that, and that I had chosen fluidity within my family and within my work situation, and being very as clear and as deliberate and careful about how, am I being attached or is this something that is continual growth and development for me? So those were kind of my question marks. But with regard to another woman in the marriage, I kept a very strong, or in the ex relationship, I took a very strong boundary and said to myself, I have a relationship with my ex. He's, 3 decades plus, and he's the father of my children, and he's a co-worker. So I have a relationship, and but I don't have a relationship with this other person, and I don't need it. I don't want it. I saw no purpose in having anything but a very clear and strong boundary. And honestly, when my ex partnered with this other person, it was probably the most triggering emotionally for me, because there's feelings of betrayal, rejection, being unloved or unworthy, that shame piece, not being good enough. What's the matter with me that I couldn't stay married or stay in the marriage? And then a little bit of the abandonment and grief that I talked about earlier. So they were very, very triggering. And that's where a strong boundary was good for me, to help me begin to manage my triggers. So, and that's again where I feel like friends and family and coworkers were very kind and respectful of, oh, there's another person in this formula of ex spouses, and everybody. I don't know. I just have good feelings about humanity in terms of giving people some grace, if you will, and space and respect. And so anyway, time goes by, and then the girls are going to get married, and they have over time established a relationship with this other woman, because she's with their dad, and there's barbecues and dinners, and
they're getting to know her.
And they care about her
with her, but the kids are building a relationship with her.
Exactly.
And she was around for years. And
yes.
Still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I realized that when the girls were engaged and they had dates for their weddings, that this was going to be a really important juncture of interface, and that my firm boundary needed to be let go of and needed to be redefined. So I had almost a year of warning from once they got engaged to when the wedding dates were established. And so I just started kind of making deliberate intentions to open the door and provide opportunities. And it was like, once I extended that, then everything began to shift. And probably the biggest extension there was a holiday, to just include in a holiday meal.
And she was invited to the table.
Yes.
And this was your kind of progressive, kind of ramping up towards the weddings?
Yep. So, and that was the inner family circle. And I decided that might be a little vulnerable for me still. So I invited more people into it. I had some friends that I knew were mutual.
Yes.
And extended the circle, and it was easy, and it was fun, and it was celebratory. And that was the beginning. And it was a deliberate intention for me to not have rigid boundary that would create discomfort for my daughters on their wedding day. So I didn't want drama. You hear stories about exes. Yeah, like dreadful stories. And that you also see where even adult children are sweating how the holidays are going to work, or that they have to split their time. And there's just this stress, a layer of stress. And I remember saying to my ex, right as we were going to the courthouse to get the divorce finalized or legally sanctioned, that while in truth I maybe wished he lived on another planet, I was going to choose love. It was a decision that I made right at the juncture of when the gavel comes down and it pierces, it's like, okay, this is it. I choose love. And I think all along the way, it's love, respect, and forgiveness, whether it's forgiving the partner for whatever happened or forgiving yourself for it. And then just holding that for yourself, for your ex, and even your kids when you wish they wouldn't be such little brats, and, be more empathetic for, here I am, a middle-aged woman finding herself out on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother developmental milestone to navigate. But
yes, I just appreciate your wisdom so much, Ellen. I know you are speaking to the heart of many people today as they consider, what are my options? And I always say, you can design your divorce in the same way you designed your wedding. And you make these choices. And that moment of, I will choose love. And then the moment I will choose to integrate this other person appropriately, intentionally. Sometimes I think we let these things happen to us rather than getting in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And deciding, this is what I will and will not accept with my boundaries. And I do so with love, right? And clarity. And now I'm ready to make it a little more porous. Did the weddings go?
Well, they were great days for my children and for their family. And it was a celebration of love. So yeah, it went really well. And I'm very proud of the way that I like that you have named it intentional. It was intentional, it was conscious, and I built opportunities to desensitize, and I didn't have, I wasn't triggered. I could just be in the presence of the joy of the day. And I do have to say that opening has changed, has continued the dynamic of being kind of fluid now in even a greater way. So within my family circle, within work, and then the extent, the modern family configuration, if you will, of all the people, all the players.
All the players' families.
And
right.
That's come in real handy because, 20 months after the wedding, there's a baby. So, or almost 2 years after the wedding, there's a baby. And so, that draws everybody in as well. And there's no thing and hawing around about, oh, when is it my turn that I get to see the baby? It's just, here we are. This is, and I know that my daughter feels a village, and in support of this new life.
Absolutely. And why would we want to deny love? Right? Even if it's really beautiful. And before we say goodbye to Ellen today, at the time of recording, you have now retired as of like 2 days ago.
Yes.
So you no longer will be seeing your former spouse at work every day. You have a grandbaby, but would you describe for us what that relationship looks like today?
Yeah.
You, the father of your children, what you anticipate now that you don't work together, and how you would, how would you describe it?
Well, we started our relationship way back in the day as really good friends. And I would say that that's still the state of our relationship, is that we're very good friends. And if I was in trouble, there is a person that I can call. He actually has become my biggest support for taking care of my dog when I want to travel. And, so we help each other out in ways that are meaningful and substantive. And it's good. We need all the friends that we can have in life. And so it is some advice and a piece of advice I had been given way back from somebody that I really respect was, instead of looking for the ways that he is no longer supporting you, focus on the ways how he is still supporting you. And that was helpful, actually, and really helped to remind me of the friendship piece of it. So yeah, we're friends. And when I left the office on the 31st of December, got a hug and just said, I'm going to miss you here. So that was nice.
Oh, thank you so much, Ellen. Ellen Carey joining us from the Rocky Mountain West today and really opening your heart and your precious and private story as a way to inspire others that they do not have to blow everything up. They do not have to stand across enemy lines, and that there is so many ways to continue to be family, right? Divorce is not the end of the family. It's just the end of the marriage, and we can renovate that relationship into what we want for our own heart.
Can I add one more piece?
Please do.
So this person that was a good advisor for me also just said, well, you could just slam the door, but I don't really think that's where the learning is for you in this. And that also just gave me permission to explore how to do this with the door still open.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we could fill our hour with more beautiful nuggets than what you've given us, Ellen. Thank you so much. And to you listeners, I will remind you, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Do you have questions or thoughts about this week's episode? Let us know by following the Good Divorce Coach on Facebook and Instagram at Good Divorce Coach, and leave a comment. And be sure to tune in every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific or listen anytime wherever you get your podcasts.